If this is not a criminal investigation by now, I would be totally and utterly surprised. When you look at the balance of probabilities, you have to look at the sheer scale of the effort already expended. We are talking about a rural stretch of Nova Scotia that has been turned over inch by inch. We've had a lot of people on the ground, search and rescue teams, volunteers, and experts who know these was like the back of their hands. And yet, after all that, we can't find any physical evidence. Not a backpack, not a shoe, not a single scrap of clothing that would suggest two children simply wandered off and got lost. When you reach that point, someone has to have the courage to say enough is enough. We have to stop looking at this as a tragic accident of nature. If you can't find them in the areas they should be, you have to move to the only other viable option, a nefarious take to this. In other words, a criminal type thing. Now, that is only my personal opinion, but the evidence, or rather the lack of it, is starting to scream that the truth is hidden behind a human hand, not the forest brush. Imagine the damp morning fog lifting over the dense woods of rural Nova Scotia. Usually, this is a place of peace, but lately, that silence has been shattered. It wasn't shattered by the laughter of two children playing in the leaves, but by the chilling revelation that the very items meant to comfort them have become the final threads leading straight to those responsible. Investigators have been working tirelessly, and they have finally traced Lilly Sullivan's pink blanket. This wasn't found in a bedroom or a playroom. It was traced from a family trash bin to a remote ATV trail. Forensic testing has confirmed her DNA was on that fragment, but the physical evidence is only half of it. They have also unlocked encrypted voice recordings, audio files that sound eerily like rehearsed confessions, chilling blueprints for a disappearance. If you believe Lilly, age 6, and Jack, age 4, deserve answers, we need to look at how the RCMP finally broke this case wide open after months of dead ends. From the very moment the Sullivan siblings vanished on May 2nd, the clock began ticking. Every search party, every drone sweep, and every helicopter flight equipped with thermal imaging came back empty. There were no footprints in mud, no torn clothing snagged on briars, not even a stray toy dropped in a moment of panic. The woods were an endless, mocking quiet. Yet, buried in that quiet was a torn fragment of a pink blanket. It was a bizarre discovery. Half of the blanket was discarded in the family's own trash can, while the other half was found snagged in branches 7 kilometers away on a rugged trail. When the DNA analysis came back, the blanket stopped being a mere token of childhood innocence. It became Exhibit A in what is now a full-scale criminal conspiracy investigation. Tracing that blanket's unlikely path began with a simple, haunting question. Who would carry a child's comfort object into the deep woods and deliberately tear it in two? This wasn't an accident. This was a trail. The RCMP began cross-checking local records, specifically looking at ATV rentals. They found that a quad had been checked out on the very eve of the disappearance. The GPS data from that rental traced a path directly to the trail where the blanket fragment was recovered. The rental agreement placed the vehicle in service at 9:30 p.m. on May 1st. Cell tower logs confirmed the vehicle idled on that back road for 45 minutes in the dead of night. That is a long time to sit in the dark, long enough for someone to disembark, leave a piece of evidence, and return to their cabin under the cover of darkness. The digital trail was beginning to glow. Cell tower data is a silent witness that doesn't lie. While public pleas were being made and tears were being shed for the cameras, the digital pings were telling a different story. The data placed the children's mother, Molly Alice Brooks Murray, in the exact same grid cell as that idling ATV at midnight on May 1st. This was despite her very public and repeated claims that she was out of province that evening. When she was finally confronted with this digital evidence, her carefully constructed story began to unravel like the pink blanket found in the woods. There were no flight manifests to prove she had traveled, no hotel receipts to back up her stay, and not a single witness who could place her at her alleged destination. Instead, the towers showed her returning to the Lansdowne Station area by dawn, hours before the children were even reported missing to the authorities. At that point, the RCMP moved with surgical precision. They moved to secure Brooks Murray's rental car, and what they found inside turned a missing persons case into a forensic nightmare. Inside the trunk, Hidden away from sight, officers discovered a single pink sock caked in woodland debris. They found a half-eaten granola bar that bore Jack's DNA. Most damning of all, they found a tuft of blonde hair entwined with pink fibers. Fibers that were an identical match to the torn blanket found on the ATV trail. Independent forensic experts have weighed in, stating that accidental transfer is impossible under these specific circumstances. This wasn't a case of a mother accidentally carrying a stray hair. This was deliberate, physical evidence that tied Brooks Murray directly to a scene she claimed she was nowhere near. But the breakthrough didn't stop with physical fibers. Investigators had long suspected that more clues lay hidden in the digital realm, beyond the public statements and social media posts. When the RCMP cybercrime units obtained legal warrants for cloud backups, they unearthed something truly disturbing. Deleted voice memo files recorded on an encrypted app. Those files were not spontaneous cries for help. They included multiple takes of the same chilling phrases, as if someone were practicing a script. "Once they're gone, nobody will search here again," one recording said. "Keep them quiet until help arrives," said another. Audio specialists had confirmed the recordings matched Brooks Murray's voice perfectly. Each take heard on those files is more controlled and more cold than the last. Clear evidence of someone rehearsing their story under pressure, preparing for the scrutiny they knew was coming. Then came the Janie recordings. These were anonymous USB drives delivered directly to the police detachment. They contained high-quality audio captured inside the Sullivan trailer by a neighbor's smart device that had been left active. In one of these clips, a second voice, later linked to a close family acquaintance, can be heard whispering a direct instruction: dispose of the evidence after dark. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have seized these tapes as critical evidence. While they haven't been released to the public yet, their existence has fueled rumors that the truth of what happened in that trailer is more disturbing than anyone in Pictou County imagined. Armed with this new knowledge, the forensics teams went back to the local surveillance footage. Hunting cameras from private cabins half a mile away were re-examined. They found footage from dawn on May 2nd, showing a hooded figure carrying a heavy duffel bag toward the ATV trail. The bag's color and shape were a match for the one later found in the trunk of the rental car. The net was finally closing in, and the accidental wandering theory was dead. As the investigation into Sullivan's siblings deepened, the digital evidence began to paint a picture far more complex than a simple disappearance. Provincial drone flights, originally deployed to find heat signatures of lost children, were reanalyzed with high-definition enhancement. Night vision footage from those early May flights captured 2 sets of small footprints positioned immediately beside fresh ATV tracks. This was the first definitive proof that the children had been present in that remote area, but the footprints ended abruptly, suggesting they were loaded into a vehicle rather than walking into the brush. This wasn't a case of children wandering until they collapsed. It was a coordinated extraction. Witness statements soon added further weight to this theory. A neighbor living near the rental cabin described seeing Molly Brooks Murray leave the premises late at night, her boots visibly caked in mud and her hood drawn tight to obscure her face. Another resident recalled the roar of a high-powered engine at an odd hour, a sound that didn't belong in the quiet of a rural midnight. When these accounts were cross-referenced with the digital logs and cell tower pings, they formed a timeline that was too precise to ignore. The RCMP's Major Crime Task Force shifted its entire operational philosophy. They were no longer operating on the assumption of an accidental wandering. The case was officially reclassified, moving toward criminal charges including obstruction of justice, public mischief endangering life, and criminal conspiracy. Search warrants were drafted, reportedly naming Brooks Murray and at least one co-conspirator. The individual whose voice was caught on the Janie tapes whispering about disposing of evidence. The tone of the RCMP changed overnight. The desperate appeals for public tips about lost children were replaced by the cold, methodical language of building a criminal prosecution. Senior officers confirmed that the investigation was no longer about finding footprints in mud. It was about dismantling a deliberate plan to remove 2 children from the face of the earth. Behind the closed doors of the detachment, a restricted memo circulated among the senior ranks. Its subject line was hidden evidence and intent to conceal. The memo argued that Brooks Murray had used her public profile as a weapon of distraction. By inserting herself into every media appearance, making heart-wrenching emotional pleas on the nightly news and streaming live updates to thousands of followers online. She had orchestrated a massive psychological distraction. What the public lauded as the devotion of a grieving mother was now being viewed by investigators as a calculated performance designed to hide the truth in plain sight. Every tear shed on camera was now being scrutinized as a tactical move to keep the search parties looking the wrong direction while the trail went cold. The urgency of the search for Lilly and Jack has now taken on a darker, more frantic energy. Federal forensic units are currently using AI enhancement technology on convenience store footage from across the border. There's a glimmer of hope or perhaps a new horror. The footage may show two small figures exiting a rural gas station in another province, accompanied by an unidentified adult. Eyewitnesses who were previously dismissed are being re-interviewed. One terrified hotel guest reported glimpsing a little girl clutching a teddy bear in a hallway hundreds of kilometers away. A local cab driver in a neighboring town now recalls ferrying a woman and two children away from the Lansdowne station area at dawn on May 2nd. Each of these leads, once considered outliers, now demands a full weight of the RCMP scrutiny as they piece together the escape route. The breakthrough the community had been praying for finally arrived this morning, though it brought little comfort. Molly Brooks Murray is officially in custody. She has been placed under a strict publication ban as the RCMP begins a grueling process of laying out formal charges in court. This arrest triggered a wave of new search warrants for multiple properties across Nova Scotia and beyond. Among the sites being raided is a remote shack deep in the woods, far from the initial search grid. Inside that shack, investigators found backpack liners that matched the gear the children were wearing when they were last seen. Even more heartbreaking was the discovery in the second trailer. Children's vitamins and a crude, homemade drawing on a scrap of paper. The drawing, captioned "Me and Jack by the River," was a haunting reminder of the innocence at the center of this conspiracy. Defense lawyers for Brooks Murray have already signaled their strategy. They intend to argue that their client was under extreme mental distress and will likely dispute the chain of custody for the pink blanket, claiming the evidence was tampered with or planted. However, the mountain of evidence is becoming difficult to climb. The ATV rental logs, the physical items found in the trunk, the encrypted voice files where she rehearsed her story, and the Janie recordings all align around a singular, devastating conclusion. This was not a moment of madness. It was a series of calculated steps. Someone spent time tearing that blanket to create a false trail. Someone spent time burying digital evidence. Someone calculated every move to keep Lilly and Jack hidden from the world. The Sullivan family and the entire Pictou County community have endured months of aching, soul-crushing uncertainty. The children's grandmother, Belinda Gray, had made desperate pleas for an Amber Alert in the early days, but her cries went unheeded by authorities who initially believed the wandering narrative. Search volunteers have poured thousands of hours into those woods, braving the elements and the rough terrain, only to find themselves chasing rumors and shadows. While online vigilantes speculated wildly about animal attacks or random strangers in the woods, the real trail was running straight through the very people who were supposed to be the children's ultimate protectors. The betrayal felt by the community is as deep as the woods themselves. Now, with criminal charges finally in motion, there is at least a measure of justice beginning to turn. But as any investigator will tell you, criminal proceedings do not bring children home. The RCMP is now coordinating with child protection agencies across the country and deploying search and rescue divers to revisit every water source in the area. Drainage ditches, abandoned wells, and stagnant ponds are being scanned with new sonar technology that can detect hidden items or bodies beneath the surface. A ground-penetrating radar team is scheduled to join the search tomorrow, focusing on a field near the ATV trail, where the earth appears to have been recently disturbed. The question at the core of this tragedy remains unanswered. Where are Lilly and Jack? Every unraveled lie brings the police closer to the truth, but whether that truth leads to a rescue or a recovery remains a heavy cloud hanging over Nova Scotia. The investigation into the Sullivan disappearance has revealed a level of calculation that chilled even the most seasoned RCMP investigators. It wasn't just a physical act of moving the children. It was a sophisticated psychological warfare waged against the public and the media. For months, The world watched a grieving mother plea for her children's return. But as a forensic accounting of her digital life progressed, a different narrative emerged. Behind every live stream and every tearful press conference was a digital footprint of someone checking engagement metrics and monitoring search grids. The restricted memos circulating to the major crime unit explicitly labeled Brooks Murray's behavior as an orchestrated distraction. By keeping the public focus on the emotional trauma of a mother, she effectively paralyzed the investigation's ability to look at her as a primary suspect in the early, critical hours. This performance was not limited to the screen. Every time search volunteers organized a new sweep of the woods, Brooks Murray was there, directing them toward areas where the RCMP now believes nothing was ever hidden. She used the community's goodwill as a shield. While thousands of hours were being poured into the dense brush of Pictou County, the real evidence was being moved, deleted, or buried. The Janie recordings, those high-quality audio clips captured inside the family trailer, provide the most damning evidence of this theatricality. In one segment, the voice believed to be Brooks Murray can be heard discussing the lighting for an upcoming media interview, juxtaposed immediately with a whisper about keeping the kids quiet. It paints a picture of a woman more concerned with the optics of her grief than the safety of her offspring. The shift from a search and rescue mission to a criminal conspiracy has forced a reevaluation of every sighting reported in the first 48 hours. Investigators now believe that many of the early tips, claims of seeing a suspicious man in a blue truck or strange lights in the valley, may have been planned by co-conspirators to lead the police away from the Lansdowne station area. This level of coordination suggests that Brooks Murray did not act alone. The RCMP has identified a second individual, a family acquaintance whose voice matches the one on the encrypted files, as a person of interest who likely handled the logistics of the transport. This individual is believed to have operated the ATV that left the tracks beside the small footprints, acting as a cleaner for the operation, while the mother played her role for the cameras. The psychological toll on the Pictou County community cannot be overstated. For months, neighbors looked at each other with suspicion, wondering if a predator lived among them. Now, that suspicion has turned into a burning sense of betrayal. The realization that the search was a wild goose chase designed by the children's own protector has left a scar on the province. Every resource spent, the helicopters, the heat-seeking drones, the specialized K-9 units, was effectively neutralized by a script written before the children even went missing. The RCMP is now retracing the distraction timeline, matching every public plea Brooks Murray made with her private movements recorded by cell towers. They are finding that every time she directed the public's attention to the North Woods, her own digital trail was moving toward the southern border. As of this morning, the search for Lilly and Jack Sullivan has entered its most intense and perhaps final phase. While the criminal case against Molly Brooks Murray and her alleged co-conspirators solidifies in the courtroom, the physical hunt for the children has moved to the most desolate corners of the province. Ground-penetrating radar teams have begun scanning a specific field near the ATV trail, looking for anomalies in the soil that suggest recent digging. Simultaneously, search and rescue divers have been deployed to drainage ditches and abandoned wells that were previously overlooked during the accidental wandering phase of the search. The mood on the ground is somber. The hope for a found-alive miracle is being weighed against the cold, hard evidence of a nefarious take that has dominated the investigation since the discovery of the torn pink blanket. The RCMP has issued a final, urgent appeal to the public, but the nature of the request has changed. They are no longer looking for sightings of lost children in the woods. They are looking for sightings of vehicles, specific time-stamped interactions, and digital footprints from the nights of May 1st and May 2nd. They are asking for any information regarding an ATV sighting in the Lansdowne station area or any online conversations that seemed scripted or oddly specific regarding the children's whereabouts. Even the smallest detail, a tire track in a driveway, a hooded figure at a gas station, or a deleted message on a social media platform, is being treated as a potential piece of the puzzle that will finally lead to Lilly and Jack. The investigation is no longer about finding a trail in the forest. It is about breaking the silence of those who help hide them. Behind the scenes, federal forensics are working on what could be the smoking gun of the case: the enhancement of surveillance footage from a rural gas station several hundred kilometers away. The blurry images of two small children exiting a vehicle are being processed with AI-driven clarity tools. If these children are confirmed to be Lilly and Jack, it will provide the first real lead on their location since they vanished. It would mean they were successfully moved out of the initial search zone and are being held somewhere, potentially by a third party involved in conspiracy. The possibility that they are still alive remains the driving force for the volunteers who refuse to give up, even as the legal system prepares to prosecute their mother for the most heinous of betrayals. The story of the Sullivan siblings is a tragedy of modern proportions, where digital evidence and human deception collided in the woods of Nova Scotia. It is a case that will be studied for years, not just for its forensic complexity, but for the way it manipulated the hearts of a nation. As the RCMP builds its final case, the focus remains on the two voices that were silenced on that damp May morning. Whether they're found in a remote shack, a hidden trailer, or under the earth of a quiet field, the world is finally listening. The pink blanket case is no longer a mystery of the woods. It is a testament to the fact that no matter how deep you bury the evidence, the truth has a way of snagging on the branches and waiting to be found. We will not stop until Lilly and Jack are brought home, and justice is served for every lie told in their name.